Welcome to Change the Channel.
Hello. It's been a while. Okay, so talking about Kristen again, because there's been a lot of inquiries about the book and the film. So there is a book, it is finished, and we are still seeking a publisher. It's been kind of a slower process than anticipated, but there's no doubt we'll find the right one at the right time. It's a wonderful book. And as far as the film, we are in the talking stage with a British film company, and we'll know more in the middle of February 2024. So that's really all I can say about that. It has been a lot slower than we thought. I was really set to make a film about Kristen back, like 2008, 2009 era. I had written a lot of stuff, and I was unsure if I wanted to do a feature film or a documentary, because the story I had in mind for a feature was really compelling at the time. I had a lot of passion for the idea of this film covering her whole life, and really showing our family life, especially in the 80s, and all the phases Kristen went through, and just tie that into her story. And it was a brilliant idea that I just could not fulfill entirely onto paper for some reason, writer's block and all kinds of, obstacles that arise. But I decided to do a documentary, and I had attended the Hollywood Film Institute, which was a 2 or 3 day seminar in New York City, and that got me really motivated. But at that time, I was actually going to pursue a comedy feature film, and I was so enthused about it, I easily attracted 5 interns working for me for free, and we were going to pull this thing off. But then, before we started production, I was like, hey, I think I want to change the course and actually do a documentary about Kristen. And I lost everyone except one of the interns at that point. It wasn't because they weren't interested in her story. It was because probably they thought I was flaky for changing my mind when we had gained a lot of momentum. But it was nagging me. I wanted to properly, display her memory in a form of art. And a film is such a perfect way to do that, because you've got the visual, you've got the music, you've got so many art forms blended, and music being such an important role in any film about Kristen. So if we do pull off making a film, I can tell you that the biggest cost will probably be in music license sync fees, because we really need to really demonstrate the broad, diverse taste she had musically. One thing I was thinking about earlier this week was when I was communicating with Patty from Hole. We would just talk occasionally. I think it was even on MySpace at the time. And she suddenly stopped communicating when I asked her about the Kristen documentary. I wanted to interview her at some point, and she didn't respond. And then like a year or so after that, her documentary comes out, Hit So Hard. And I just wonder if she had already intended on making that film, or if something that I said maybe had sparked her desire to do it, because it was just strange that she stopped communicating, you know what I mean? When that happens, you can only guess, and you make up stories about what's actually happening. You don't have any facts, So one thing I wanted to clear up, which is kind of silly, but somebody had posted something online a long time ago about me and something about Kristen's. I dated Chris. It was on Reddit. It was like, I dated Kristen's brother. He's a psycho. Blah blah blah. And he told me that Courtney or the FBI interviewed my family for hours. That's not true. The FBI was never involved, as far as I know. Not with my family, at least. Nobody was ever approached by the FBI. So that is totally false. I don't know why that person did that. But, yeah. So, just wanted to put that out there. It's not true. So, the other thing I wanted to touch on was, let me see. Let me look in my notes here because I depend on them. Yeah, anyway, so I'll go back to where I left off. I was trying to make a film about Kristen, and I got to this point. There was an Amphetamine Reptile Records anniversary in Minneapolis. Super psyched to go to that. I think that was like 2010, somewhere in there. And that was a great place to interview people. So I had started production on the documentary. I'd started interviewing people that knew her or played music with her in Minneapolis. And at this point, I did have a few people on my team as far as people interested in helping me make a film. And so, I brought my little Canon video camera and my audio recorder, and, it wasn't fancy, but I got the interviews, and what happened is I basically came home, and not too long after that, I had a new recording studio built in the basement. And when I turned on my computer, I had my USB hub connected, and I had my backup drive connected to that. So everything was hooked up, and there was a power surge. And it fried the USB hub, and it fried my drive, my external drive. I don't know if it fried the hard drive of my main computer, but I lost all of the audio of everything I had filmed, because I had taped the audio separately, like you're supposed to. So that was gone. I still had the video, and I had the sound from the video, but that put a huge crimp in my progress and motivation. So I shelved the project at that point, and I have not talked about a film or, seriously until, just about a year or two ago. So, this has been a long time in the making. I had spent a lot of time writing about Kristen and her life, trying to put a story together for a feature film. I had done quite a bit of work and research, and just, accumulated all this stuff. And it was great to meet Guy Mankowski, because he just seemed like the perfect writer to write a book about her. And I'm happy that it's done, and he's been great to work with, and we're pretty stoked. Oh, you know what I wanted to talk about? When back in the 90s, I don't know, I just feel like sharing this. In the 90s, I was living in this awesome loft space, like 1,500 square foot loft space with wood floors and huge bay windows in the city of Buffalo. And I don't know, it must have been 1996. I don't know exactly. And I was still, I was obviously still affected by her death at that point, just 2 or 3 years later. I went through all these phases too with that, I had inherited basically everything she had, and I was like wearing her clothes. I was totally living in her shadow. And I was trying to piece together what happened. Like, why did she die? And I started putting together these, I had poster board, and I had family photos, and I was placing them strategically so that I was like finding patterns in our behaviors, the family's behavior, Kristen's behavior. I was trying to identify, if I could see a pattern of why she died, like what led up to it, like if there was anything significant there. Obviously, I was going a little bit mad. I was seeing patterns not only horizontally and vertically, but also diagonally. So I was, in that weird zone there. Nothing ever really came of that, by the way. I just wanted to share that because I thought it was mildly interesting. So, the book will be out, and will a film happen? Well, a film probably will happen. We just don't know when. There is a rumor that Courtney Love is involved in some film. I don't know if it's about her or Hole or what it's about, but that seemed to be a concern for some people in the film business, that it would be hard to market our movie because of that. Now, I don't agree with that, because the story is very unique and different. And it's not just about Hole. It's not about Courtney. So, I don't see the conflict. But we will know more in mid-February about moving forward with that particular company or what we're going to do. But we do appreciate, fans reaching out and asking about, when's the book going to come out, when's the film going to come out, and there's enormous interest in this stuff, which is awesome. But I want it to be done right, and it is hard for me to kind of like be holding on to the past in a way. So I just kind of, a part of me just wants it done. I want to move on, but I want to make sure that her memory gets preserved proper. And that's really hard to do. And, it's some people say, well, documentaries or films, bioepics, what are, don't really do justice to the person they're about, because they didn't have anything to do with the film, and it's not like it was, it's not reality, it's not the same, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I don't think it could hurt. I think that a lot of people would enjoy it, and it would create some closure, which I think is the goal, is really to, there's all these unanswered questions about how she died. So that would be, a focal point of the film. It wouldn't be the only point of the film. The film would be to display her entire life, her achievements, her phases, her activism, and obviously her music, and be powerful and empowering. And if it's a documentary, then it could get weird, it could get dark, it could get who knows what could happen. I mean, if you saw Kurt and Courtney by Nick Broomfield, that would seem to be a kind of improvised project. It totally went a different direction than what he had intended from the start. So that could sort of happen with our film in a way, but we have to be real clear on the intention and what we're trying to say and what we're trying to do with it. Because, this is digging up old worms or whatever. It's, there's the whole like Courtney Love thing, and like people afraid talk about things, which is understandable. But, I think that really just we need closure, It's like, just let us do this right, and, I'm not too worried about Courtney freaking out. I think at this point in her life, she, has reconciled with parts of herself and understands the Kristen story is important, and nothing really to do with her, and it's not meant to be an accusation against her. Now, of course, if we start interviewing people and there's like new evidence or claims against Courtney or whoever, then that we have to roll with that. That's just the way it is. I mean, there's still a lot of mystery around the circumstances of her death, and so we don't really know what to expect as far as that's concerned. But that's, the intention of the film isn't to be a conspiracy flick or true crime genre when we don't even know what, the truth. Now, personally, I've always said, you know, despite what happened, Kristen's ultimately responsible for her own life because she made her own choices, and she knew she was in some shady stuff, and she chose to stay there, right? But there's other questions, I mean, personally, her death felt very untimely. It was so shocking. It was just horribly shocking because she was so full of life. You couldn't imagine that person gone. And that was the only consoling thing about the wake, is to see her in the casket and not looking anything like her, and purely feeling she was somewhere else, that she was, alive somewhere else. That energy was definitely somewhere else. So I took comfort in that, but it was, it was so shocking. And, there's all these stages my whole family had to go through, of course, the grief and the shock and the anger and the sadness. And so, it took a long time to process all of that stuff. Decades, it's never fully processed, but it's, there's stages. Yeah, so I want the film to be a great film, and I think if we do it right, it'll resonate with a wide audience, and it's well beyond just like Hole or grunge or rock music. It's beyond that, with the multi-dimensional elements of the story and her whole life and everything, that encapsulated that, and the story about the family in the 80s in America and everything. This soul going off to Boston College for the first time from a comfy suburb, being bombarded by ideas and culture and concepts and activism, just, overwhelming. And how she dealt with it and how she adapted and the phases, she took on, and her rebellion and all of that. So, yeah, I don't want to say too much. It's like I don't want to give too much away at the same time, so I'm being real mindful of what I say at this time. But hopefully I cleared some things up for you all, and we appreciate you, and we'll be in touch. Thanks for listening.